Well, as you wake up, I have to tell you the conflict in Ukraine continues to escalate as Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky warns that Europe must wake up now or risk another nuclear disaster like Chernobyl.
We're going to get the very latest on what has been happening. Our security editor, Mark White, with us now. Why would this have been an accidental bombing off this power plant, or what has happened?
Well, I can't imagine for the life of me that even the Russians would want to actually target a nuclear power plant, because they would be one of the first to potentially suffer the effects of any fallout if this was to go into meltdown. There was shelling near the plant at a training facility, we're told.
Is this Chernobyl we're talking about?
It's not. It's Zaporizhzhia power plant, which is Europe's biggest power plant. Chernobyl, of course, we heard about, you remember, Anne, just last week. I think we were talking about it over the weekend. It was one of the first goals of the Russian military was to get control of Chernobyl, not because they want this site of a 1986 nuclear disaster. That's the last thing they want. They want the corridor, the most direct route down to the capital, Kiev, and they've got control of that now. The plant, we understand, is continuing with the decommissioning up at Chernobyl. But Zaporizhzhia, that plant, there was a fire. There was a delay in getting the fire brigade in there initially for a few hours. Luckily, as I say, it was in the training facility and not
What actually caused the fire?
Plant.
Was it them shelling because they're trying to take over the area?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to take over the area around there with a view to gaining control of that wider area. As I say, if they were to blow up a plant, they're also going to suffer from the fallout. But that doesn't
you
stop
remember right at the time you were on air.
I was on air the morning of Chernobyl
when the explosion had happened, and what was the feeling back then?
We all thought we were going to die. We really did. We were interviewing. We were planning to do an ordinary breakfast programme, and we literally threw what they call the running order up in the air and just interviewed nuclear expert after nuclear expert after nuclear expert all morning. And all of the signs were that there was an enormous nuclear cloud coming towards us. There would be acid rain. And frankly, we all thought we were going to die.
And it landed because I remember in my hometown, big sheep farming area.
That's right.
It landed on the grass up in Scotland, and there was all kinds of bans then on products and eating sheep meat and cows in general because they were contaminated with nuclear fallout.
This fire at Zaporizhzhia, did you say something like that?
Zaporizhzhia.
We think it's out now, don't we?
It's under control now, and as I say, it wasn't near the reactors. It was in a training facility, but the very fact that there's shelling right next to a nuclear plant is just ridiculous.
So the strategy, whether it's Zaporizhzhia or wherever it is to hit cities. Still not a move on Kyiv yet?
Not as yet, but we think the goal is to get Kiev surrounded. This armoured column has been making its way down to Kiev slowly but surely as the images have been coming out of horrific destruction. Now, there's a 3D image which has been produced showing that armoured column. It's absolutely enormous, 40 miles long. Now, I think the reason it's gone to 40 miles long, because initially it was a few miles long, is it was 3 or 4 abreast at one point. They've realised that's probably not the best tactically sound move. So they're, you can see, just in single file now, and they're snaking out.
And it was thought to be suffering. I mean, it's going slower than people thought, and it was thought to be suffering from lack of fuel.
Yeah, our Ministry of Defence, which has been carrying out its own intelligence analysis of the situation on the ground, believes it's a combination of lack of proper logistics, that those fuel supplies, food supplies, ammunition supplies, getting tanks and other vehicles further down that road is hampering it. That, along with the fact that the Ukrainian military are putting up a fierce resistance there. But all of the while, of course, elsewhere in Ukraine, they are encircling areas and they are bombing those areas. And that appears to really be the playbook as far as the Russian military is concerned. We've seen it in Syria, around cities like Aleppo. We've seen it, of course, also in Chechnya.
But what we can't understand, Mark, we've been asking the question all week, we're going to ask it again today, is, I mean, it's a sitting duck, and it would be great for morale to upset that convoy in some way. And we just don't understand why the Ukrainians aren't taking a pot shot at it.
They have been taking pot shots at it, and they've got drones that have been supplied to them by the Turkish military. Not many, and they're asking for more, and they're asking for jet fighters as well. They want the redundant old MiG fighters that their pilots are used to flying.
Yeah, but you just can't say we're going to bring in a new Eurofighter or whatever it is and have somebody
they couldn't
to fly it.
No. So that's sort of no use to them. But Romania has some stocks of old MiG fighters that the pilots in Ukraine know how to fly. Okay. So if they can get them into the country, but that's far from easy. And obviously from Russia's point of view, would be very provocative as well. So they have to do with what they've got. And very effective weapons, actually, are the ones that have been supplied in abundance by the US and the UK, and more coming in now with European and even Germany putting in these Stinger missiles that they can act as sort of ground-to-air missiles, take down Russian aircraft, and anti-tank missiles as well. The NLAW missile, shoulder-launched, really simple, that doesn't require much in the way of training. And they can take out these Russian tanks and armoured personnel carriers. And
see, what we can't understand is, even if they didn't want to do anything as provocative, as you say, as actually bombing the incoming tanks, the personnel, the Russian army, why don't they just bomb the road and stop them coming? I mean, they are, as Eamon said, it's like sitting ducks.
Yes, I think they have been to an extent. Obviously, this is a 40 mile long convoy, and there are some aerial footage of that convoy, but we don't have crews on the ground there that are able to get the images. But we understand it is coming under regular attack.
It is.
But listen, also, there's another point. Why don't we have crews on the ground? Explain to the general public. They're called embeds, or they used to be. You would have an agreement with the forces involved that you carry media, press with you. Why is that not happening?
Well, I think the Russian forces are allowing some of their own embeds into... I think I saw some footage the other day that showed helicopter footage up with Russian forces in their helicopters. There's not much of it. They're coming under fierce attack. They don't necessarily want their own crews up there showing how they're getting pummeled by the enemy at times. And it's very dangerous for the Ukrainians, even if the Ukrainian military was willing to have camera crews with them. That kind of fighting in the front line is just, I think, too risky for most Western crews.
You remember one of the most famous embeds from the Falklands War was Brian Hanrahan.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
And because he was embedded, he wasn't allowed to say statistics. So he said, I watched all the fighters go out, I counted them out, and I counted them back in.
Yeah.
And that's all he could tell us. It's one of the most famous lines of an embed, not being able to give that too much information, but being able to convey the most important fact.
Mark, I'll be bringing you more information throughout the programme this morning. For the moment, my friend, thank you very much indeed. He'll be right across all the news coming out of Ukraine militarily, and we'll bring that to you shortly.